Welcome to NTD Good Morning.
Here are today's top stories. Federal authorities are joining the search for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. Her daughter, NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie, has uploaded a video addressed to whoever is holding her mother captive.
Immigration enforcement in focus. President Trump says 5 new cities are being considered for operations as he discusses the need for better public relations. And Secretary Kristi Noem visits the southern border.
Illnesses are being linked to a suspected illegal biolab in a Las Vegas home. Police say multiple people fell sick as investigators test more than 1,000 samples.
And President Trump holds a call with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping as a major critical minerals summit in Washington could be a significant step forward in countering the Chinese regime.
And the Super Bowl this year will join in the celebrations for America's 250th birthday. What the America 250 Commission has planned.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters in New York City, here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Today's Thursday, February 5th. This is NTD Good Morning. Today's top news. The search for NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie's 84-year-old mother continues.
The family now speaking directly to whomever may be holding Nancy Guthrie. Here's the latest.
Today's Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie posted a video message yesterday addressing anyone who might be holding her elderly mother.
Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. Our mom is our heart and our home. She is 84 years old. Her health, her heart is fragile.
Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her Arizona home several days ago. In the message posted to Instagram, the NBC co-host spoke to the potential captors directly.
As a family, we are doing everything that we can. We are ready to talk.
Savannah, who appeared with her brother and sister, said the family had heard media reports of a ransom note, but said it was an age in which such material can be faked.
We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please, reach out to us.
The siblings spoke directly to their missing mother, calling her their beacon.
Mama, if you're listening, we need you to come home. We miss you. Mommy, if you are hearing this, you are a strong woman. You are God's precious daughter, Nancy. We believe and know that even in this valley, He is with you.
President Trump said he spoke with Savannah Guthrie yesterday. In a Truth Social post, the president said he's directing all federal law enforcement to be at the family's and local police departments' disposal. Nancy Guthrie was last seen on January 31st when she was dropped off at her home by relatives after having dinner with them. Authorities say she was reported missing the following afternoon. Police have cordoned off her home. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos told CBS that Nancy Guthrie could not have walked away from her home and that he believed she was abducted. He told reporters this was not dementia-related and that the elderly Guthrie is as sharp as a tack. He noted Guthrie had limited mobility and she was taking medication daily. As of now, no suspect has been identified.
And the sheriff will be holding a press conference later today on the situation. Our hearts and our prayers go with the entire Guthrie family at this difficult time.
That's right. And next, we will take a look at immigration enforcement. President Trump has signaled that immigration officials are adapting their techniques amid heightened tensions.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and an update from the southern border with DHS Secretary Kristi Noem.
The Trump administration is reducing the number of immigration officers in Minnesota due to increased cooperation with local law enforcement.
Given this increase in unprecedented collaboration, and as a result of the need for less law enforcement officers to do this work in a safer environment, I have announced effective immediately we will draw down 700 people.
Border Czar Tom Homan said it is smarter enforcement, not less. President Trump discussing enforcement operations in Minnesota.
I learned that maybe we can use a little bit of a softer touch, but you still have to be tough. These are criminals. We're dealing with really hard criminals.
Trump says he has called Governor Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Frye and had great conversations with them.
And then I see them ranting and raving out there, literally as though a call wasn't made.
Trump called the shooting deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Good unfortunate, speaking on NBC News.
He was not an angel, and she was not an angel. You know, you look at some tapes from back, but still, I'm not happy with what happened there. Nobody could be happy, and ICE wasn't happy either.
And the president says they have 5 cities his administration is strongly considering for new enforcement operations, but they prefer to be invited.
We could have Chicago be a safe city, just like D.C. is a safe city, just like all of these places that we've gone to.
The Department of Homeland Security said yesterday 4,000 illegal immigrants, including violent criminals, have been arrested so far in Minnesota under Operation Metro Surge. Recent arrests include criminals convicted of sexual conduct with a minor and domestic assault. President Trump praised DHS Secretary Kristi Noem when asked if she still has his confidence.
Look, she was in charge of the border. The border's closed. We have the best crime numbers that we've had in 125 years. I think she's doing a very good job. Again, public relations. She's not getting credit for the job that she does.
Noem visited the southern border yesterday, saying the Trump administration has delivered the most secure border in American history.
And we did it with the immediate aftermath we were facing from that humanitarian crisis that was created from Joe Biden's open border policies.
Noem says the border is so quiet that sometimes you can even forget how bad it was just a little over a year ago.
During the Biden administration and those open border policies, we saw even the UN declare that the United States and Mexico border was the deadliest land route in the world.
Noem says some counties along the border had to install migrant morgues just to pick up the dead bodies that were passing away.
And while the left tries to tell us many times that it's somehow compassionate to allow that kind of chaos, it isn't. It was dangerous.
The Homeland Security Secretary criticized those against enforcing immigration laws and deporting illegal immigrant criminals, saying, "What about the victims of their crimes?" Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And Secretary Kristi Noem says a person accused of leaking information from the Department of Homeland Security has been caught. She said the leaker put law enforcement at risk. She has not named the individual.
In a post on X, Noem said that the department would track down leakers and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, regardless of standing or political appointment. Noem said there has been an 8,000% increase in death threats against federal agents in the recent months. And joining us to discuss Border Czar Tom Homan's update on the surge in Minneapolis that we just saw earlier is Simon Hankinson. He's Senior Research Fellow with the Heritage Foundation. Good morning, Simon. Thanks for joining. Your initial reactions to Homan's press conference yesterday.
Well, it's not unexpected, is it? What was happening in Minnesota was getting a lot of national attention and international attention. The facts on the ground were being spun ludicrously out of proportion, all kinds of conspiracy theories, artificial intelligence photos, members of Congress, politicians, media making, frankly, uninformed and stupid judgments. And then just this vilification of immigration enforcement that I've never seen anything like. I mean, people who know absolutely nothing about immigration law or how this country works, suddenly having an opinion that agents of the United States government are equivalent to Nazis and need a Nuremberg trial. So I think, taking the tone down a bit is a good idea. But also, if Homeland was able to get the cooperation that he asked for and needed, that Minnesota and Minneapolis could always have given him, then none of the events that we've seen over the past few months, including the 2 unfortunate deaths, would have happened. So I'm glad to see if that's the case, that Minnesota is putting their pants on and behaving like adults and understanding that their own views don't outrank those of the voters of the United States as a whole.
And I do want to come back to that point about what might be behind what President Trump has referred to as the agitators. But staying with Homan, he said that there would be a 700 agent drawdown immediately, the goal being to draw down completely to the pre-surge levels. Are you clear what that goalpost looks like to go back to the normal amount of ICE and CBP agents in theater and returning those people back to those states where Homan said they are needed, like I think he said California and some other states where they had to take those ICE agents from?
Well, yeah, I mean, ICE is part of DHS. They have offices in all probably the big cities, New York, Portland, Boston, and they have a limited number of personnel to go after what's somewhere between 15 and 20 million illegal immigrants, of whom at least 500,000 are currently deportable, meaning they've got actual written orders of removal, and hundreds of thousands more will be coming into that bucket as the immigration courts move through them. So they can't all be in one place at one time. They had a surge around Chicago. They had a surge in Los Angeles. They had a surge in Minneapolis. Now, the number of illegal immigrants in Minnesota is not large compared to, say, Illinois, New York, California. So it would make total sense at some point to put officers back into their original headquarters. And remember as well, if you're surging, then all those officers have to be put up in hotels. You're paying them per diem. They're not living at home with their families. So there are additional costs, both in morale and in financial terms, that you have to pay when you have a surge.
And then while stating, this is Homan, stating how proud he was of the ICE and the CBP for their performance and professionalism under what was, of course, intense pressure, he said that they did identify two operational gaps, one which clearly already rectified that they're getting the body cams and that the officers themselves prefer to have those body cams. He also said that there was an issue with not having a single chain of command. Can you explain what he was referring to and how that was playing out tactically on the ground and how streamlining that has improved the situation?
I'm only going to guess here because I'm not privy to the information that he has, of course. But I would think that it's to do with you've got under DHS, you have Customs and Border Protection, and under them come the Border Patrol. And then you've got Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They're separate bureaus within DHS. And under Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, you've got ICE Homeland Security Investigations, and then you've got Enforcement and Removal Operations, ERO. So there's lots of different branches of DHS that are all working together. And they've had to bring in people from all these other units. Then I believe they've brought in some other federal units to come and help with the force protection. If National Guard are there, you've got them, you've got local police. So there are all these different agencies that are working in the same place with the same basic goal, where they should have, which is to keep each other safe, to keep citizens safe, and to also execute the policy, which is to find and arrest people who are here illegally and for whom they have reason to take into custody. So I think he may be talking about that confusion on the ground, which could be maybe more streamlined, and it could be more clear who exactly has the authority at every given stage of operations.
Yeah, that makes sense when you're bringing resources from a lot of different places and a lot of different departments where they might fall into their traditional chain of command, but you can see why that would be important to integrate them into one operational workflow. And as we finished up, Simon, Homan had said that while they don't agree on everything, that he had established with the local leaders a joint focus on public safety. That's where they found the common ground. Do you see any evidence that outside agitators or outside influences used this as an opportunity to achieve the levels of chaos that were achieved on the ground, which of course endangered both the law enforcement agents as well as the peaceful protesters?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of interesting reporting on this. You've got in these protests slash riots a mix of people from genuine, but I would say uninformed locals. Minneapolis is a pretty far left city, so there's a lot of people with far left political opinions that they're entitled to have. But then you've also got a hardcore of activists who, frankly, are part of the Omni cause. I mean, they're out there. If they weren't protesting ICE, they'd be protesting capitalism, or they'd be protesting Israel, or one of the many things that they want to protest. And they're well funded. We've seen some professional agitators. We've had them here in Washington who get paid to go out by the day and protest. And they've got organizational groups and manuals. They've got signal chat groups. They're not Delta Force, but they are for left-wing agitators pretty well organized. They're not completely random. And we've seen that in the BLM riots. We've seen that through the autonomous zone in Seattle. There are always professional, well-paid, well-funded, and well-equipped agitators who either glom onto or try to lead local protests.
Well, I appreciate you breaking that down in your analysis this morning. Simon Hankinson, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And of course, as the Trump administration has announced investigations in that direction, there may be more revelations to come, and we'll be reporting back to you on that if there is. But next, new information coming in about an alleged illegal biolab in Las Vegas.
Yeah, this property's former cleaning employee says that multiple people who spent time inside that house, they fell ill. And that's according to newly released court documents.
So police say the cleaner actually reported seeing lab-style equipment, chemical containers, and refrigerators inside a locked garage, along with a strong hospital-like odor. Not only that, but she told investigators that she and a handyman became, quote, deathly ill. She said days after entering that space, they were suffering breathing problems, fatigue, muscle aches. And the cleaner also said that several guests and residents got sick, including one person who was hospitalized with severe respiratory issues.
Authorities have arrested the property manager, and they sent more than 1,000 suspected biological agents away for testing as this investigation continues. Investigators say the Las Vegas home is owned by a Chinese national who is already in federal custody in connection with the unauthorized lab that was uncovered in California back in 2023.
And turning now back to Minnesota, a Senate subcommittee heard testimony yesterday on allegations of large-scale fraud in that state and the state's social service programs.
NTD's Arlene Richards has some of the key takeaways.
We will explain how the fraud actually took place, the mechanics by which these schemes operated, and the very real harms they inflicted, not only on taxpayers, but on vulnerable children and on law-abiding Somali families whose trusts and identities were exploited.
Republican Senator Ted Cruz kicked off a hearing on Wednesday that examined allegations of massive fraud in Minnesota's social services programs. He partially blamed Minnesota Democrats for what he called deliberately turning a blind eye. A federal probe into the alleged fraud was triggered after 23-year-old independent journalist Nick Shirley published a report saying that multiple daycare centers in Minneapolis, run by members of the Somali community, were fraudulently collecting millions in government aid.
So I know Minneapolis very well, most notably the enormous number of child care facilities that had opened up. I would drive around the Twin Cities, and it seemed these child care facilities were literally on every block.
Independent investigative journalist David Hoke worked with Shirley. He said the fraud is easily in excess of $30 billion. Public affairs activist Robert Weissman said there was no evidence to support that estimate.
Unfortunately, the reality is the Trump administration is systematically dismantling the anti-fraud programs of the federal government.
Meanwhile, Hoke said the way to fix this is for the federal government to go into Minnesota agencies and arrest those who commit fraud. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Now that lawmakers have ended the partial government shutdown, the clock is ticking on DHS funding. Democrats are expected to unveil their proposed changes today, while Border Czar Tom Homan has announced a drawdown of ICE agents in Minnesota. NTD's Melina Weisskopf joins us live. Good morning, Melina. Where do negotiations stand at the moment?
Hey, good morning, Steph. Good to see you again. It's been quite some time.
It has.
So negotiations are at the very beginning stages right now. Yeah. Lawmakers do need to reach a deal by February 13th. That's next week. But they are acknowledging already that this is not going to be an easy task, Steph, because of how sensitive the immigration issue is to both sides of the aisle. Democrats, like you mentioned, unveiled a list on paper with their demands. Today, that official bill language is expected to be unveiled. But their demands that were on paper track with everything that we've heard verbally so far from their side of the aisle, things like asking agents to remove their masks and requiring them to show their ID numbers. They also want to expand judicial warrants and to protect sensitive locations. I'll let you listen quickly to what Senator Schumer yesterday when they unveiled their demands.
There are certain places they shouldn't be able to go in, churches, synagogues, schools, election places. There should be no racial profiling.
Now, while Republicans have said they are open to certain changes, there are certain sticking points on the Republican side. For example, many Republicans have been weary of the request on the masks and the ID issue because they say that this would create a level of exposure that could allow criminals to target agents and their families. Here's Speaker Johnson as well as Pete Sessions, another Republican from Texas.
Because unlike your local law enforcement in your hometown, ICE agents are being doxxed and targeted. We have evidence of that. Everybody knows that is happening.
A professional conduct on duty, but not to be harassed when they go back home or their families. So I think that correspondingly it would be a fair thing.
Now, as for the judicial warrants, Steph, there's also strong pushback from at least House Speaker Mike Johnson on this because he said multiple times that expanding these judicial warrants would create more red tape and bureaucracy and ultimately slow enforcement efforts. So the fact that Republicans are already sort of drawing red lines on issues like this is going to be interesting to see where negotiations go from here because it's looking like there's already very little give and take from both sides of the aisle, Steph.
So, Melina, do you think that the Trump administration's drawdown of some agents in Minnesota will be enough to pave the way for a quick bipartisan plan?
I think it's possible, but lawmakers say that it will be difficult, even so much as Senate Leader John Thune yesterday saying that they may need even to have a full-year funding bill, a full-year continuing resolution for the Department of Homeland Security to give ample time for these negotiations to unfold. He said that he long opposed the 2-week deadline. Listen to Thune.
I had argued at the time was way too short to allow anything consequential to happen. What I hope it doesn't devolve into is something that, makes it harder, not easier, to deport and detain dangerous illegal aliens in this country.
So with the Trump administration going ahead and taking these actions with border czar Tom Homan, with requiring them to already wear body cameras, removing those agents from Minnesota, that could enable, open a pathway for Democrats to be more open to what Republicans are willing to negotiate here. But I think ultimately you could face a math issue because remember, both chambers have a very slim majority, which means that at any one time there could be just one lawmaker holding up these negotiations and stopping them in their tracks, Steph.
Yeah, certainly looks like it could be down to the wire. Thanks so much for your updates this morning. NTD congressional correspondent Melina Weisskopf. All right, and yeah, there's actually so much development. Even now, we're going to have much more throughout the day as well for you. But President Trump will be attending the National Prayer Breakfast later this morning. And that's where he's expected to give remarks. We'll be reporting on that, too, as it happens.
Absolutely. We'll bring that to you live. Of course, every president has participated in that, regardless of party affiliation, since it was founded, going back to the 50s. So we'll be looking for that. And up ahead, the U.S. and Iran, they're going to hold their talks tomorrow in Oman. What President Trump is saying as the two nations still very much at odds. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to NTD. Good morning. The Trump administration is racing to break the Chinese Communist Party's dominance over the critical minerals needed to power our everyday lives in America.
That's right. NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu has more on that, plus President Trump's phone call with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping.
President Trump describes his call with CCP leader Xi Jinping as, quote, long and thorough, covering many topics, among them Iran, Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine, trade, and the president's upcoming visit to China in April. The president says that Xi Jinping is considering upping his U.S. soybean purchases from 12 million to 20 million metric tons this season and to 25 million tons next season. However, past deals with the CCP have proved fragile, like the October trade truce reached back in Busan, South Korea. After months of zero U.S. soybean purchases from China, China only met that 12 million ton goal barely after repeated delays and extensions, highlighting the risk that CCP commitments may be reneged or eroded. And the Trump-Xi call also comes as Washington today hosts a summit, a global summit to challenge China's critical minerals monopoly. And just 2 days after President Trump signed an executive order launching a $12 billion critical mineral stockpile called Project Vault. Take a look.
That's the key goal of a critical mineral supply, and today it's heavily concentrated in the hands of one country. And that lends itself to, at worst case scenario, being used as a tool of leverage in geopolitics, but it also lends itself to any sort of disruption.
China has got a stranglehold. They can control anywhere between 85 to 100% of the top 20 critical minerals. This is a threat not just to the U.S., but to the whole world.
Over 55 countries are attending the summit, with half expressing interest in joining a, quote, preferential trade zone that will establish price floors for critical minerals. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the goal is to prevent the kind of disruption that comes with a market monopoly, or that monopoly being used as leverage against other countries. This set pricing mechanism would counter the Chinese regime's predatory pricing practices that drove global rare earths miners and processors out of business years ago.
In the 90s, that the Chinese Communist Party, where China was given kind of like the open door to corner this market, and it was by design. At the same time, they would drive in a dependency of their potential adversaries in the Western world, notably the United States.
National security concerns became more urgent last year when Beijing imposed export controls on rare earths, causing production delays and shutdowns for auto manufacturers in America and Europe.
Every single one of us represented in this room has become dependent on arrangements we did not choose. We all face the same vulnerability: access to the things that protect our people and sustain our way of life sometimes can vanish in the blink of an eye without any control or influence from many of the countries in this room.
And the White House has confirmed that talks with Iran are set for tomorrow. The meeting in Oman comes amid heightened tensions over Iran's nuclear program and a U.S. buildup in the region. A White House official told the Epoch Times the meeting was rescheduled after Arab leaders urged the Trump administration not to pull out of talks. Washington and Tehran remain at odds over the scope of negotiations. The U.S. has insisted on Tehran's missile arsenal being part of the discussion, while Iran's leadership has vowed only to discuss its nuclear program. Speaking to ABC, President Trump said Iran's supreme leader should be, in his words, very worried. He said if the U.S. hadn't taken out Iran's nuclear facilities last year, they would have produced a nuclear weapon within a month.
And the second day of Ukraine peace talks are underway in Abu Dhabi. U.S. officials are meeting with representatives from both Russia and Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said yesterday that negotiation teams had agreed on another prisoner swap in the near future. This was confirmed this morning by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who said delegations from the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia have agreed to exchange 314 prisoners, the first such exchange in 5 months. In a post on X, Witkoff said that the outcome was achieved from detailed and productive talks. He said significant work still remains, adding that steps like this demonstrate that diplomatic engagement is delivering results and advancing efforts to end the war. He said discussions will continue with additional progress anticipated here in the coming weeks.
And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is back on Capitol Hill today to testify before the Senate.
Today's hearing comes after a fiery hearing in the House yesterday where Bessent defended the Trump administration's plan to cut regulations and build up Main Street. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more on that.
In 2006, I take that as a no. You traveled to Venezuela. I take that as a no.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent testifying before the House Financial Services Committee on Wednesday, a hearing that at times got pretty heated.
For the American people, don't be a cover-up for a mob.
Maybe you're going to see your friend Nicholas Maduro in Brooklyn
not recognized. Bessent made it clear that the Trump administration is going full speed ahead on cutting regulations for small and community banks. The goal? Make it easier for home buyers and small business owners and farmers to actually get the loans they need.
Small banks became too small to succeed.
Bessent says small banks are the primary lenders to middle-class Americans. Boosting their lending power and slashing the red tape is absolutely essential. More than 55% of community banks have vanished since the 2008 financial crisis. Now, this lines right up on his annual report on the Financial Stability Oversight Council, which he's presenting to both chambers of Congress this week. And things got testy, especially when tariffs came up.
Are tariffs inflationary? Yes or no?
According to the San Francisco Federal Reserve, with 150 years of data,
Yes or no?
Tariffs do not cause inflation. Lumber is
Reclaiming my time. You don't get to talk.
Lumber is at a 5-year low, Congresswoman.
Reclaiming my time.
That the mass unfettered immigration, adding 10 to 20 million new people demanding housing, Congresswoman, is what caused a great deal of housing inflation for working Americans.
Besson also touted President Trump's other policies like deregulation and those $1,000 Trump savings accounts for newborns.
How will these Trump accounts impact this new generation of Americans' view of financial independence versus socialism?
History would show that people who own a piece of the action do not want to bring down the system when you are part of the system. The goal here should be to have everyone own a piece of the American economic engine.
Besson also made clear two big priorities for the administration: cracking down on Chinese money laundering and cutting off funding that supports China's military.
We were very focused on Chinese money laundering organizations, which originally began as a way for Chinese citizens to get money out of the country. As China clamped down on the leakage, they morphed into partners with the Mexican drug cartels.
Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And new campaign finance disclosures over the weekend showed that President Trump has raised $26 million through his joint fundraising committee in the second half of last year, and another $8 million directly into his leadership PAC. And the Trump-aligned MAGA Incorporated Super PAC, well, it ended 2025 with more than $300 million on hand. Joining us to discuss the president's war chest and its goals for the midterms is Angie Wong. She's a Republican strategist as well as a political columnist. Great to see you, Angie. Good morning. How is Trump's campaign war chest, how does that signal a change from previous second-term presidents going into the midterms?
Good morning, Carrie. Yes, this is great news. You know, having a very full war chest is exactly what we need to kind of break the spell of what happens during midterms with presidents. Usually, traditionally, and historically, the president usually loses at least the House or the Senate. And that's what, you know, the timeline has said. But I think President Trump is going to do everything he possibly can to make sure that he has a full 4-year presidency where there are no hiccups in the House or with the Senate, and that, you know, the Republicans control all 3 branches. So for him to now shore up the money for it, $26 million this in 2025, the last 2 quarters, plus already he had $400 million in the bank cash on hand. That's going to be significant because right now, Democrats, they're actually in the negative. They still owe $17 million from Kamala Harris's run for the U.S. presidency. And also, they didn't really raise that much in the last 2 quarters. We're hearing that the DNC only has $14 million cash on hand, according to FEC reports. This is not great news for Democrats, especially since there's going to be a record number of House retirements this year, 45 seats. 45 seats of retirement, which means that the next Congress is going to have the largest freshman class.
And Angie, just to put things in context a bit, President Trump has courted and entertained many of the top tech CEOs in the White House. It seems like, you know, where they have heavily supported Democrats, they might be, you know, neutral or what have you in the midterms, hard to say. But, you know, there's so much money on the Democrat side as well. Are you saying that it will be hard for them to make up the difference, or do you expect, you know, the people that typically support Democratic causes to come out in sort of a rushed manner going into the midterms so that they can fight fire with fire?
Yeah, what I've noticed with a lot of the kind of tech titans is that they kind of straddle both worlds, right? They do, they donate to Democrats, but they also donate to Republicans. And right now, Democrats are not having a winning message, certainly not in the media. They don't seem to have clear leadership. The party, quite frankly, seems pretty split. It's fractioned off between the far left and kind of the moderate left. And I think Democrats are looking at that, tech titans are looking at that going, well, you know, maybe I should have a footprint in, you know, something outside of Silicon Valley. Maybe I should go to Florida and Texas, which is what we're seeing the migration of. So I think they are kind of straddling both worlds. They're probably going to donate to both. But here's what Elon Musk says. He says he's going to finance the midterm elections for for Republicans. That is a huge win because we know that money buys these races, and they really do, because you have to buy so much media in order to get the messaging out and to get the voters out. And this is going to be great, especially towards the last few weeks, months leading up to Election Day, because that's when you really need the emergency funds to do the last minute push to make sure that you get over the finish line.
And if you look at President Trump's successful presidential run, as well as Zohran Mamdani's very successful campaign to win the New York City mayoral race, the tactics are different, but I presume that the overall strategies remain the same. What do you expect from Trump supporting the congressional election races going into, the midterms, which really is going to be kicking off? If it hasn't already, it's going to be kicking off quite soon. What tactically is different, and what do they need to do to win?
Well, Zohran Mamdani ran a really, really interesting race. We're still dissecting it. It was a very smart social media race. His social media team read the algorithms every single day and made sure that whenever he spoke publicly, the candidate, he used those keywords just so that they would go viral. He knew exactly what he was doing. We're starting now to see a lot of local candidates emulate the same kind of SEO structure. That's really important. Also, what Zohran did really well was that he went into high-rise buildings, something that Republicans still need to do. They don't know how to go into the urban areas. They know how to door knock on individual houses, but we really do need to start looking at kind of like the densely urban areas to now go into, because our messaging is right, our policy is right, but getting into the spaces where moderates, independents, and Democrats live, that's something that we need to kind of hone in on. Now, I see Trump's strategy as doing both. He is going to do the traditional campaigning, which is his rallies that he's kicked off in recent weeks, as well as a lot of the kind of technology-driven campaigning that I love to see more and more of. I think that is something that we need to get a better grasp of, because, again, as I said, our messaging, most Americans agree with common sense. That's what we're pushing out. We just need to make sure that everyone hears it, not just Republicans, not just the right. And I think that's going to be the major challenge of 2026.
Well, we're already covering it. I know it's just going to continue to heat up. Really appreciate your analysis this morning, and good to see you, Angie Wong.
Nice to see you.
And up ahead, measles cases rising across the Americas, with Mexico reporting the most. Over 1,000 cases have been confirmed so far in the U.S., Canada, and 5 other countries. We have that and more. We'll be right back. Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. I'm Carrie Dunst. If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines. NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie is pleading for the safe return of her 84-year-old mother who disappeared from her Arizona home. In an emotional message, the family said they are ready to talk to whomever is holding Nancy Guthrie. Investigators say they are sure that she did not leave on her own, and they're treating the case as an abduction. President Trump says federal law enforcement is now assisting as well. And the Trump administration says immigration enforcement is being adjusted, not reduced. They're citing increased cooperation with local law enforcement in Minnesota, and DHS reports thousands of arrests under Operation Metro Surge. Meanwhile, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem visited the southern border, saying the Trump administration has delivered the most secure border in American history. And court documents reveal multiple people fell ill after spending time in a Las Vegas home that's suspected of housing an illegal biological lab. A former cleaner reported seeing lab equipment, chemicals, and a strong hospital-like odor in a locked garage. She says she and a handyman became seriously ill, and several residents and guests also suffered symptoms, including one hospitalization. And after ending the partial government shutdown, the clock is now ticking for DHS funding. Democrats unveiled a list yesterday with demands including no mask wearing, the need for judicial warrants, and for federal agents to wear body cams. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said body cameras are now being deployed, but Republicans say they are open to certain changes, but not all, including the wearing of masks. They say this type of exposure could allow criminals to target not only agents, but also their families. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says it's possible lawmakers will need another extension for DHS funding to give more time for these negotiations. Those are this morning's top headlines. With that, Steph, over to you.
Thank you, Carrie. Next, allegations of racial discrimination against white workers. Nike is now facing an investigation. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is seeking a federal court order to probe alleged discrimination as part of Nike's DEI programs. And the commission said it is investigating whether Nike intentionally discriminated against white employees and job applicants, including by disproportionately targeting them for layoffs. It said Nike had refused to comply with a previous subpoena seeking information such as data on the racial and ethnic makeup of the company's workforce and a roster of employees chosen for mentoring and development programs. A Nike spokesperson called the filing a surprising and unusual escalation, saying the company is cooperating with the commission and has provided thousands of pages of information.
And health authorities across the Americas are raising an alert after this surge in measles cases. Mexico is reporting the highest number so far. They've got more than 1,000 cases confirmed in the first 3 weeks of the year across 7 countries, including the U.S. and Canada. No deaths have been reported. Health officials, they're monitoring hotspots closely, including South Carolina and parts of Mexico. They're urging residents to ensure their vaccinations are up to date on measles vaccinations. Now, the Pan American Health Organization says gaps in immunization are what's driving the rise, especially among children under 1 and adolescents. Some experts blame declining vaccination rates on the COVID pandemic response. Authorities advise anyone who may have come into contact with the virus to monitor for symptoms and consult healthcare providers.
Sex trafficking in the U.S. is a widespread and underreported crime, and the demand is only growing. But there are people out there making strides in combating this horrendous crime. Joining us here in studio is Josie Carignan, the founder of an organization called Rescue Her. Good to have you with us, Josie, and I'm so looking forward to talking about this. You have such an extraordinary story, and the story of this organization is also equally extraordinary. You were a stay-at-home mom when you saw something, noticed something untoward happening, and you decided to do something about it. Tell us the beginnings of this organization, Rescue Her.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I was a stay-at-home mom. I was not an expert in human trafficking. As a matter of fact, when I first encountered trafficking, I hadn't even heard about it. I didn't realize that it was happening. And then I came across a woman, a young woman who had been trafficked across borders. And as I'm hearing her story, I was like, what in the world is this all about? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And through a series of events, our family ended up helping this young woman. And I thought to myself, like, wow, like as if she was the only one. I'm like, we did such a great thing here. Like, we have solved this problem. But you know, when you encounter something, it pops up everywhere all of a sudden. And I started then hearing stories and statistics and seeing it everywhere. And I thought, how has this been happening right under my nose this whole time? And at the time I had 3 kids and my youngest was just going into kindergarten. So I was starting to look at what could I be doing with my time. My kids are in school and I thought, well, I want to do something about this. I'm a believer, so I felt like God really called me to do this and do something about it. So that's kind of what triggered me to start on this journey of starting Rescue Her.
Amazing, and that is something that I think speaks to a lot of people's take on this very horrendous crime is they think, oh, it must not be happening near me. I'm not encountering that in any way, but there are lots of red flags, which we'll talk about too. And you've been driving this organization for many years, so I know you've seen a lot and got a lot of insights. Your focus is within the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yes.
Tell us about what do you encounter? What do you find in terms of human trafficking and sex trafficking just in that area?
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things that people may not know is that it happens everywhere. We tend to think of it as a problem abroad or a problem right around border communities. When I started Rescue Her, I actually lived in a small town with only like 30,000 people. And we moved to DFW later. And obviously the bigger cities have more of a problem. It's no more an issue in DFW than it is in Los Angeles or New York City. Like all of the major cities in the United States have a huge problem. But so did my little town, and I had no idea. So
who's involved, as far as you can tell?
Yeah, well, the victims are often vulnerable communities. And across the globe, we have about 50 million victims of trafficking, and that includes labor and sex trafficking. But about 70% of that is sex trafficking, and 70-ish% of that is female. And within the United States, the victims that we encounter through Rescue Her are predominantly U.S. citizens. They were not smuggled in from abroad. They're just vulnerable communities, like underprivileged, maybe they were in foster care, they were abused as children, and the average age of entry is around 12 years old. Wow. So there are those who prey on and groom young women and gain their trust, and then they exploit them.
How do you find them?
Well, we work together with law enforcement. We have a hotline where people can then call if they see something. Victims themselves can reach out, but we get referrals from law enforcement, from other anti-trafficking organizations, and it's been a long road of just really gaining the trust of and start to collaborate with other organizations. We are now, when I started, I had not heard of any other organizations, and I started with just a little bit, what can I do to help the one, which is really where the name came from, Rescue Her, because if you think of 50 million, like that is so overwhelming. Yep. So what could I possibly do? Like that stat kept running through my head, and I thought, what if I could just help one? Yep. It does make a difference for their life. So there are over 40,000 nonprofits in the North Texas area, and we are one of 3 that are a part of the North Texas Trafficking Task Force.
Right. And so people can find out more about your organization at rescueher.org.
Yes.
The hotline number, I don't know if you have it by heart, but
it's only good in DFW. And
okay.
But you should call the National Trafficking Hotline, because then they get routed to us. So that is always, that is 24/7. If you see something, say something.
What would you say are some key red flags?
Some key red flags is a person that is not able to make decisions about their own life. They maybe don't have access to money. They may be confused about their surroundings. They don't have any personal items. Or you might just see a demeanor change, because a lot of times it could just happen in a suburb or in a community. You might know somebody that all of a sudden things seem off. So just be on the lookout and then ask questions, and don't put them at risk, but instead call the National Human Trafficking Hotline.
And I do want to talk about what actions your organization takes to help these people.
Yes.
I noticed that a lot of it involves surrounding them with a sense of community, with resources. What do you see as the key issue that they're facing that you can help with?
Yeah, I think one of the misconceptions, which I know when I first started and I didn't have all the information I needed, I thought that if we could just remove them from the situation, if a survivor was taken from their trafficker and rescued, so to speak, then they would be okay. But there's a lot of trauma, and there was a reason why they ended up there in the first place. And so community care and a holistic approach is really, really important. So at Rescue Her, we work with adult victims, and if they are trafficked at 12, that means they have at least 4 years of that trauma, and they need more care. So we do crisis response alongside law enforcement, but we also do advocacy after. And there's no end to how long we'll walk with a victim and a survivor, as long as they need it. So that includes legal, medical, housing, teaching them how to budget, how to get a job, how to reconnect with family, celebrating their birthday, like just normal life, and learning them, giving them a community.
Yeah, and in terms of that ongoing trauma, I noted on your website it had mentioned that human trafficking is unfortunately a highly profitable kind of crime, because a human can be sold over and over and over. And so what do you see in terms of who's doing the buying?
That is such a sad question and hard to answer, because it could be anybody. Like, I have found that it's in all walks of life, and it's really just so sad. And you're right about the profitability. The over-sexualization of our society drives it. Pornography drives the demand. And then profit is really what keeps the business going. So it's over $200 billion annually that trafficking brings in, which is more than Coke, Netflix, Disney combined.
Wow.
So that's what drives this whole industry.
Yeah, and so you mentioned pornography there. There's tons of social phenomena out there that could be adding to this kind of addiction that would cause this kind of abuse. But you're a pastor as well, I know, and your faith is a large part of your actions here. How do you see the underlying causes behind this scourge?
Well, for me, because like you said, I'm a believer, that's what first drove me to want to help. And I believe that light overcomes darkness on both sides, whether it's the trafficking or the victim. Obviously, we help survivors. But I think the only answer to this, in my opinion, is God. And changing our society from being abusive and over-sexualized and pornography and turning back to being a God-fearing society that cares for one another. I think love is the answer. And I believe that only God can heal a broken heart. And we encounter a lot of brokenness, but there is hope and there's healing. And otherwise we couldn't be in this work that we're doing, because if there was no hope, like, it just is so sad and so tragic.
I do see the love element coming through, and when I look at all the different ways that you help these victims, you know, there's a way that people can contribute where they will sponsor a specific woman who's been through a lot of trauma, and they'll be able to connect with her, send her birthday messages and things like that to just show some warmth alongside the resources that are out there.
Yes, we were trying to make it personal and easy for people to help, because that was for me when I started out, when I was just like, okay, how am I supposed to do something about this? There is something that everybody can do. So we want to make sure that everyone who wants to make a difference can, and it matters so much, even the smallest things. So you can give financially, which goes to all of those needs that the survivors have. And like you said, then you can connect also personally by sending messages or gifts. We just did a Christmas shopping. You know, everybody had their wish list, and we gave them, we throw baby showers. We help with just normal life stuff, because they don't have any other community than the support that we provide. So it's very important. You can find all that information. You can become a sponsor. You can donate at rescueher.org, and every bit makes a difference. Wonderful. I will end by saying this, that if you don't think you can make a difference, just take a look, because I think we can all, like, as many victims as there are many more of us who could make a difference and really put a stop to this. Yep. Currently, we have to turn away about 50% of the people that reach out for help because of lack of funds.
Wow.
So it really matters that people take a stand and donate and do what they can.
Absolutely, and I see your love of God, of people, and your mother nature coming through here through the work. So
yeah, I have two daughters myself, and that's what made it for me. You know, how can I not help? How can I not help? I have two girls. Like, I started finding out these stories, and I'm like, I can't sleep at night. What if this was one of my girls? Who's helping them? Who's helping them? So.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and your insights, and I wish you all the very best with Rescue Her. Its work is ongoing and will continue, and I wish you all the very best in that.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me and shining a light on this. It really matters.
Thank you so much. Josie Carignan.
And up ahead, America's 250th birthday celebration will be featured at this year's Super Bowl. What the America 250 Commission has in store. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to NTD. Good morning. Vice President J.D. Vance arrived in Milan, Italy this morning alongside his wife, Usha, and their children.
That's right. Vance is expected to lead a U.S. delegation. It includes his wife, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the U.S. Ambassador to Italy, and several former Olympic gold medalists.
Vance will be following in the footsteps of former Vice President Joe Biden, who attended the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver, and Mike Pence, who attended the 2018 Winter Games in South Korea.
Vice President Kamala Harris did not attend the 2022 Winter Olympics that were held in Beijing, and that was as a boycott over the country's human rights concerns.
This year's Winter Games will be the most spread out Olympics in history, with two primary sites separated by about 250 miles.
The site in Cortina will host events including women's alpine skiing, as well as bobsled and the luge events.
And the U.S. Coast Guard is ramping up security for Super Bowl week. They gave an update yesterday on those efforts. NTD's David Lamb has that story from San Francisco.
The U.S. Coast Guard is already increasing presence on the waterways and assisting in a safe Super Bowl 60. As with large events like the Super Bowl, they want to make sure there are no bad actors, crime, as well as negligent boating incidents.
Overall, the Coast Guard is ready to support the public and participants during the Super Bowl festivities, February 3rd to 8th, working with our port partners to maintain situational awareness and promote safe events throughout the week.
With the backdrop of a sunny day and cool air from the Pacific Ocean, Coast Guard officials say their team is well-versed and practiced, and their Super Bowl support is a more robust and augmented form of their daily duties. Support includes K-9 units, boat operators, and the Pacific Strike Team to handle any hazardous materials.
So it's just if there were to be any sort of hazmat incident, we're available to help clean our first responders and help them either go home or get back to work within the stadium or the event.
This is what we call a level A suit. So this would be for an incident involving hazards that to your breathing and to your skin. And so we would wear a full face mask, boots, and a protective suit.
There's also a drone restriction in the area.
If there are incursions, we either use our equipment to stop that drone or we send ground units working with local police and our own operators to enforce the TFR.
The U.S. Coast Guard's motto is Semper Paratus, which means always ready. And as of Wednesday, they said there are no specific threats to the Super Bowl. Reporting in San Francisco, California, David Lamb, NTD News.
And thanks to Daniel for that report. While there's been a lot of attention on the halftime show, this year's Super Bowl will also celebrate America's 250th birthday.
That's right. The America 250 Commission has partnered with the NFL to weave elements of the celebration throughout the event.
Of course, that was David.
It was a great way to get the word out about America 250. So we were featured on the footballs, featured on the coin toss. So here it is here, America 250 on the heads, NFL logo as the tails. We're stenciled on the sidelines. Our flag was rolled out on the field along with the American flag, and we have lots more planned for the Super Bowl.
Very exciting. Super Bowl week kicked off in San Francisco on Tuesday with the Super Bowl Experience opening to fans. During the event, fans could enter an America 250 Airstream and record their own American story.
On the 4th of July, the organization will bury a time capsule for 250 years. That will include various items from the 60th Super Bowl. America 250 Chair Rosie Rios said Americans can expect several events leading up to Independence Day, or as she put it, quote, "We're rolling up into July 4th with America's ultimate block party."
All right, not everybody is looking forward to the Super Bowl this Sunday. Some fans are getting excited for this year's Puppy Bowl instead, and I think that might include you, Carrie.
I like the Puppy Bowl. I'm more of a Super Bowl guy, but I love the Puppy Bowl. Yeah, so we've got Team Fluff as well as Team Rough. They'll feature a brand new roster of cute pups to take part in some pre-football action.
So cute. This year, the Puppy Bowl will also feature a halftime showdown between older dogs, Team Oldies, and Team Goldies. A reminder that senior dogs deserve love and adoption as well.
That's right. The Puppy Bowl 22 will feature 150 different dogs from 72 different shelters across the U.S., Puerto Rico, as well as the British Virgin Islands.
And I look forward to some footage from that event, but we'll be bringing that to you later. So if you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, be sure to send us an email at goodmorning@ntd.com. That's all we have time for now, but you know we always love to hear from you.
That's right. For round-the-clock original news coverage, watch us live at ntd.com/live or use our NTD app. Thanks for watching. I'm Carrie Dunst.
I'm Stephanie Cox. See you soon.